our party, well, actually, Rod Cullerton and Len Harris actually served this quo warranto on Canberra a few days ago, because what we're trying to do is put a petition together, and unfortunately it needs to be pen and ink, so you can download it from the GAP website, greataustralianparty.com.au. And what we're doing is, we get 100,000 signatures. We've got barristers ready to go to the House of Commons in the UK and have all of our politicians in Australia who did not sign the correct oath to the Commonwealth being the common people, us, and instead swore their oath to the Corporation of Australia, which is a body corporate, as cited in the Governance, Performance and Accountability Act of 2013, that any bureaucrat who didn't sign the correct oath to serve us actually is removed. Now, that would be 100% of Australian politicians. So
not just that either, Nicola, also the judges, because we've got people that are in the courts that are looking for the oaths of office and there aren't any. They can't find them.
Fabulous. Where do I sign? Says a message. Go to greataustralianparty.com.au and go into forms, and you will see it in there. It's to go to the House of Commons. We got thousands of signatures last night down in Gippsland. All we have to do is alert people to the fact that they're not serving us. They're serving the corporation. They were sworn in to serve the corporation. This has been the case for a very long time. And when we remove them and reinstate a Commonwealth Parliament representing the people, the real Parliament will serve as an oversight committee with checks and balances to stop what the corporate side of Australia is doing. They'd have to go through the People's Parliament to get anything done, and that would make their lives very difficult, particularly if I was there.
Nicola,
I just love seeing pressure on these guys. That's what I love. Everyone
Is that petition to His Majesty?
Yes.
Or is that quo warranto?
Quo warranto. It's going to the House of Commons, that one. Well, that one's been done, so you have to sign the one to His Majesty, yeah. Because you see, the Commonwealth Constitution of Australia 1900 UK, people think, oh, you know, that's tied in with the king. They're literally, it's not tied in with the king. It predates any monarch. It predated Queen Elizabeth II, who had her coronation in 1953, and it predates King Charles III as well, because it was fully signed off on in 1901. So this Commonwealth is protected. This Commonwealth and her people have a right to a Commonwealth government. And right now, you literally don't have one. You literally don't have a Commonwealth government. You only have a corporate one. And as listed in the Act that I mentioned, there are two types of Commonwealth entity, a body corporate and a Commonwealth entity that's not a body corporate. We don't have the not a body corporate one, and we should. So we need to fight together. We need to sign that form. We need to get to the House of Commons. We've got constitutional barristers ready to go, and we could literally get the lot of them fired. Okay, a decision has just been made that I thought I would share with you, my followers. And if you're in Australia in particular, you, my followers, are actually going to become extremely important in my new endeavour. I would go so far as to say the ball is in your court, Australia. I am going to place myself in the political arena, and I've been offered a position in the political arena on local level, on state level, but I've decided to raise the bar. I've decided to go in straight at the top in federal politics by running for the Senate. Now, I've been courted by the Uni Party, well, one side of it anyway. I've been courted by some of the Freedom parties, although they wanted me to run as seconds and not as the primary candidate. And after much consideration and much deliberation, I've actually decided to run in federal politics as a bit of a wild card, and I'm going to run for the Great Australian Party. It makes me very proud. I've actually been talking to Rod Cullerton for a very long time about the state of Australia and how things have become very unconstitutional of late. But we have a very, very clever little advantage up our sleeve with regard to myself in particular running federally for the Senate, and that will become apparent as time moves on. But this particular difficulty that's going to face these people with myself running could be the one thing, the one singular truth that brings down digital IDs in Australia. That's why I've decided to run for the Great Australian Party. You can go to the Great Australian Party. This news is so new. I'm not even on the website yet. Perhaps this clip will be. I'm very, very excited. I need you to support us. If you donate to the Great Australian Party, you must remember to say that it's in the name of Nicola Charles, who will be running for the Federal Senate of Australia for the Great Australian Party. Make your donation count. Please spread the word. It is time to change things for this great country. I myself feel like I owe Australia a debt because I wasn't born in Australia, but I am 100% Australian made. And that fact is about to become a very big thorn in the side of Australian federal politics. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Another, come up please, Nicola. I want to introduce to Nicola Charles. We're very fortunate to have her, and look, to be honest, all of you are very fortunate to have her putting her hand up to run for the Federal Senate for Victoria.
It's quite early in the game for me, so I feel like I should say welcome to the White Rabbit podcast. I don't know if any of you have ever seen my show. I think it's... thank you, Rod.
Yeah, no problem.
I was very emotional along with you guys when Rod was speaking. I think it's very poignant that we're in a church because what we're facing in the world today is enormous evil. And I am one of those women, I'm one of those mums that Rod was referring to who had enough. So I came to this country in 1995. I'm British by birth, but I'm often described as an adopted Australian or just an Australian now. And I consider myself 100% Australian made. And so I came here to work. I was one of these migrants, and I guess I still am one of these migrants, like many of us who came from other nations. And we came to build this country and to work in this country, and that's what I did. And I had a great time. Many of you will know that I had a very successful career in television and then radio. And I thought, and still believe, that Australia is the best country in the world, and I never considered myself in any way to be a slave. I never considered myself in any way to be controlled by any government or by any politics. I was happy to pay my taxes. I believed in a military deterrent, and I believed in the police force. And then in 2020, along came Daniel Andrews. And like for many of you, I suddenly sat up. And I think one of the worst decisions made by this, what I consider to be an international criminal cartel that has subverted our democracy and our constitutions with corporate contract law, because who among us goes around swatting up on corporate contract law? Well, unfortunately, now we have to. I had no idea that someone would stand there publicly on television and tell me that I could only go outside for 1 hour a day. Honestly, I thought it was a joke. And I thought, well, this can't happen, this won't happen. And the next thing I heard was Daniel Andrews said that people couldn't go to the pub. No, I'm not someone who hangs out in pubs, but I go occasionally. And I laughed. I laughed out loud because I thought every single Australian I know will say, rack off, mate, you know, I'm going down the pub for a tinny or whatever, you know, whatever Australians say. And that didn't happen. And to my absolute horror, I started watching everyone comply. And I think it was very foolish to lock us down because Well, what did we do? We got bored. Initially, I started watching back-to-back episodes of Family Guy. My husband likes Family Guy, thinks it's quite funny. And I honestly thought it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So I tweeted out to my television fans, I'm getting a master's degree in Family Guy. And Fox in America retweeted it, and I thought, this is great. This lockdown's brilliant. I'm already getting more followers on Twitter. And I really didn't take it that seriously. And then I realised something else was going on. And the moment I realised something else was going on, and it sort of bore into a different part of my brain that made me eager to do research, was when Scott Morrison did a speech about vaccine rollouts. And I wasn't initially on board with that. My mother in the UK was a microbiologist before she retired. She never let me take antibiotics. She never let me get anything done. She didn't even let me get my tonsils out. Even when they were huge and covered in white mushrooms, she said, just take a drink of water and swallow those mushrooms down. And I thought, this is great. All the other kids get to go to the doctor and I don't get to go to the doctor. But Scott Morrison stood there and he was talking about this awful vaccine rollout. Yes, I'm a horrid anti-vaxxer. I guess I'm just anti-science at the moment because I think it's been hijacked. And he stood there and he said, so, everyone can go out and, we've got these lists of people again. This started to give me chills. They started referring to certain groups and lists of people. And I thought, why are we dividing up society? Something else is going on here. And he stopped, and I won't do it on this because it will collapse. He stopped after he talked about vaccine rollouts and within a split second went, now, climate change. And honestly, my whole world collapsed because I've always considered myself to have really good instincts as a woman and as a mother. And I looked at him in his $12,000 suit and I said, something else is going on. Why would you talk about vaccines and then slap the podium and go into climate change? So what we're looking at now is something that is affectionately termed by us conspiracy theorists. Apparently I'm a conspiracy theorist according to Anthony Albanese in the ABC, who hailed me as such because I went up against the Voice to Parliament referendum. Because I would always go up against amendments to constitutions because constitutions are wonderful. Why would you ever amend them? My suggestion online to Anthony Albanese was, why don't you just give all the Crown land back to the Aboriginals? We're all fine with that. Didn't hear a word back. No, because you don't need to change the constitution. You can get your checkbook out or you can stop mining on sacred land. So what we've got here in this fifth generation war is subtle attacks that we can't really see and we don't really hear about, but we can feel. We're feeling it physically now, those who've become ill. We're feeling it psychologically. We're feeling it emotionally. We're feeling it democratically. We're feeling it economically. We're absolutely all feeling it economically. And what we're living through right now, these days that we're standing in, is the new Event 201. And I don't know if any of you know about Event 201, I'm sure you do. This little cyber breakdown practice that we're living through, I believe, and many believe, who are well versed in these things, is a practice for the big one. Now, the big one has been told to us that it's coming by unelected people like Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum, by Yuval Harari, by Bill Gates, and we must get prepared for the big cyber attack. Now, the problem with these people is the way they predict the future is they invent it. And don't they look clever when they do it? Bill Gates writes books on how to save us from climate change and then makes the climate change. They warn us that we're going to be in a cyber attack and cyber warfare, and then they flick the switch. And this is what they do. They keep us jumping from one foot to the next, because if we're focused on the financial side or the health side or the economic side or the psychological side, there's just too much for us to deal with. And all this is being allowed to happen because of much that Rod has referred to. So he talked about the freedom of information request at GAP, and I just want to go into it a little bit more with you. So we have a wonderful lady who works with us at GAP who puts all of this paperwork together, and her mind is just incredible. So she said, let's put in this Freedom of Information request to the Attorney General's office and ask, who is the Queen of Australia and what was the date of her coronation? And I got really excited because all these pictures were going around the internet of this supermodel. Did you see it, the blonde girl? And it said, I'm the Queen of Australia. And I thought, wow, we're actually going to find out who she is. And there was much talk of her being sort of one of these female Australian billionaires, these mining billionaires. And we're all going to find out that we have a queen we knew nothing about. And it came back from the Attorney General's office. And we're standing in a church, but it was a bit creepy because the number for the office is all sixes. So at first I saw the phone number and I was a bit worried. And it said, Queen Elizabeth II was crowned Queen of England on the 2nd of June 1953. And Jill and I thought, well, that's not answered who the Queen of Australia is. So we asked again, what do you mean? And they said, well, as per the 1973 Royal Styles and Titles Act, the Queen changed her title to Queen of Australia. And as a Brit, I thought, I don't remember her doing that. No one told us in England she was now Queen of Australia. And I thought, would she give up QE2 like that? I mean, they took the time to write it on the boats. So I can't see her changing all the boats to Queen of Australia. And of course, they were wrong, and they knew they were wrong, and they continued on the conversation with us, and then they started to get nervous and said, well, you've only got until July 14th to ask another question, and then we'll consider this matter settled. So we said, okay, can we have a list of all the referendums that have happened in Australia? And so, of course, as it turns out, there is no Queen of Australia, and we informed the Attorney General's office that there is no Queen of Australia, that they were actually referring to Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of England, and that the Queen of Australia is a legal fiction. That's the term. I like to use the term legal deception. Because what started happening then for the last 51 years, I'm 54 years old. So from the time I was 3 years old, Australians have been deceived, and I've been here for 30 years and I didn't know you were being deceived, and I consider myself pretty awake. So this title in documents and oaths and swearing in and legal documents started appearing, Queen of Australia. Now, they say that because Queen Elizabeth II of England signed the Royal Styles and Title Act, and you can see the signature on the front, the Attorney General's office sent it to us so we could have a look. If you've ever signed a document, a mortgage, a land deed, a contract for work, anything, you will know that each page has to be initialed, and then you have the back page and you have the typed out, one would imagine if one was lucky enough, Queen Elizabeth II of England, may she rest in peace, and also everyone else who witnessed the signature. There's none of that. There is a scroll, Queen Elizabeth II on the front, but what that means, as per royal protocol, is that she's read the document. That's what that means. It's literally like me doing a fan signature at a personal appearance. It doesn't mean anything legal. But what they took that to mean is that they could create a corporate entity called the Queen of Australia and have this corporate entity controlled by the Labour Party, registered for tax in America, foreign interference. Does anyone care about that? Treason. That this Queen of Australia would pass bills and laws. So the Labour Party are passing bills and laws. That's what that means. So what this could mean is that all of your bills and laws since 1973 are unlawful. It could mean that. And of course, as I said earlier, what did we see from 2020? We've seen Australians treated appallingly. Now look, prior to all this, when I was an actress and a radio host, I considered myself proudly as a hard-working girl, mother of 3, to be a capitalist conservative. I'm also a Christian, I'm not all bad. I was a capitalist conservative, and I thought if I work twice as hard as everyone else, I'm going to get ahead and it's going to be okay. And even if my children are born with an IQ of 65, they won't need to worry because mummy would have worked hard and provided for them. But that all changed. That all changed in 2020 when things went awry. Now, as a capitalist and a conservative prior, I would have been behind a corporation of Australia if it was to benefit Australian people. We've got a situation now where Australian natural gas, 53% of it is given to Shell. They don't pay anything for it. Your gas, that's the Commonwealth, the wealth of the common people, that belongs to you. Do you know that in the UAE, if you've got a clean driver's license, you don't pay for diesel or petrol? Because you're from the UAE and the oil comes out of your land. Wow. And it's your gas. It's your natural gas. Oh, if you build a house in Victoria, you can't even get natural gas now. You're not allowed it because they want to sell it or give it away. So 53% is given away. They give it away to the corporations, including one of Bill Gates' corporations, of course. And they also don't charge them tax. Quick question?
Yeah, just a quick one. This corporation... This corporation has got shareholders, private shareholders. So how do we know that our tax dollars aren't going to the Bill Gates of this world? They are.
I know that some of these voluntary taxes you're talking about, I know that...
I don't pay tax, I tell them where to go.
Right. No comment there. I don't want to get arrested as I leave. I can tell you that you should be paying it into the Commonwealth Revenue Fund, which is, and we'd all be happy to, I'd be happy to, which is your Commonwealth Taxation Fund. But Labour Party closed that for you. So now you're paying it to the ATO, and the stakeholders primarily are Bank of America and BlackRock. That's who you're giving your taxes to.
They're foreigners, so yeah. It's treason on our part.
So I would have been behind this.
To give them money.
Yeah, I would have been behind this corporation of Australia if it was benefiting Australian people. Obviously, it's not. Obviously, you've been bulldozed into a situation, I feel, and this is strong language, where Australia is being raped and pillaged of her coal, her gas, her rare earth minerals. Everyone's getting rich from it except for you. In fact, you're being charged more for it as they're getting rich for it. And this also answers lots of other questions, you know. Loathsome creature though he is, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't understand why Bill Gates has the ear of our bureaucrats, particularly our prime ministers. And so the reason is they're a business and they're in business with him.
That's right.
Now, because a corporation is based on dollars and not on, you know, what's best for the Australian people, they don't care that he is a known associate of a paedophile and a child sex trafficker. They don't care that he's on flight logs registered 37 times going to Little St James, Epstein Island. They don't care that his wife publicly divorced him because of his association with a child sex trafficker, because they can make money with him, and they don't care if you despise Bill Gates. He's allowed free reign over Australia. He also gets some of that free gas. So the reason why we, trying to stay apolitical, wish to do this thing that we're calling the restoration of the Commonwealth is to get this train of Australia back on the tracks, because she's well and truly off. She's going through the outback. Now, the thing is, you know, the question, why don't we walk back into Parliament House? They have all the guns, and they took yours away. No. Primarily. So we are looking at a situation where, you know, one of my big supporters in this endeavour with GAP is a 37-year veteran of the Victorian Police Force. He was a CERT commander, CERT being the Critical Incident Response Team, those awful tanks that we saw in the pandemic. And all the memes came out, and there were sort of 15 coppers on the tank, and it said somebody sneezed. We got the tanks out in the city, and he resigned because he didn't want to take the jab, but also he said there was no way he was ever turning his weapon on an Australian.
Shame too.
He's now got a successful building career. And he also tells me he doesn't pay tolls, he doesn't pay rates, and he doesn't pay tax. Because he's suddenly woken up and he understands what's going on. And he told me he feels guilty that for 37 years he would arrest people and pull people over and accuse them of a crime, and now he knows they didn't commit any crimes. Now, talking of committing crimes, while these people have been busy bulldozing us, they've also been harming Australians in little ways. And I, on my podcast, try and talk about this as much as I can. Just last week, there was a story that broke my heart. It's not bad enough that I have now lost 10 people post-medical help. I also have about 30 people who are experiencing nosebleeds, the likes of which I've never seen, that make me want to run in horror because I don't quite know what's coming out of them. Heart attacks, myocarditis, pericarditis, lots of tinnitus, lots of neurological damage, lots and lots of COVID, unsurprisingly. And they're also continuing on with this financial persecution. So I have another family who's a friend of my family, and they have a 21-year-old daughter. And this 21-year-old daughter honestly looks like a supermodel. There's a small part of my brain that wants to sign her up to a 5-year management contract, and I'll send her to Milan. I'm sure I could make a lot of money from this girl. But all her life she wanted to be a florist. And so her family set her up to be a florist in the village of Belgrave in the mountains. I'm sure you've been there, it's lovely. And if you ever go, it's called Fraulein's Flowers. She is a 21-year-old girl who gets up every single day and goes to work. She was frightened to get the medical intervention, and she got it on the very last day that she was allowed to keep her business. And they threatened her with a $60,000 fine. After she got it, they told her to place a piece of paper with her private medical information on. Imagine if we had to do this with other things. List your STDs, how many times you've had athlete's foot, and cold sores. You know, how many cold sores have you had? What blood type? This and that. They asked her to place this laminated piece of paper with her medical information on so that her customers could see. So she put it behind the counter, because as you're looking at her at the counter, you can see the certificate behind, and some of their COVID police came in. And the COVID police said, geez, that's, you know, it's out the back there, it's a bit hidden behind you. And she's 21. And she said, well, I'm happy to put it on the door, or if it's not okay there. And they said, no, doll, you're okay. It was, ladies, you're okay, you can leave it there. 3 weeks later, she got a fine for $27,261. Now, her father's a bit feisty. He works in construction. So he took the fine, scrumpled it out, and put it in the open fire. And the next thing we know, for years and years, this was 2022, for years and years, all these COVID fines were being thrown out. And she thought, well, it's okay, because I don't think they have jurisdiction to give me that fine. Last week, they called her and said they were going to kick the door in of her shop, and that they had a legal right to kick her door in, to seize her assets, to pay this $27,261 fine for not adequately displaying her private medical intervention. So I put this young lady on my social media, hearts poured out across my social media, and she set up a GoFundMe page. What did this girl do wrong? This Australian girl. She took their injection, which must terrify her now with everything we know about it, on the last day because she didn't want to. She gets up every morning and she goes to work. Now, there are plenty of people in that age group around 21, whether they're Australian or they've come in from everywhere else, who are running around, committing crimes, doing anything they can to grab money from anyone. And you've got a hard-working Australian there, and she's being persecuted. And we can't put up with it. Because these guys in $12,000 suits, they come and go. Dan Andrews is out of here. He set up his businesses on St Kilda Road. Albo will be out of here. Scott Morrison is out of here. Because they come in and they utilise this corporation to do the best, to make the most money for themselves and the corporation they can by raping and pillaging Australia and Australians, and they will do it until every last cent is gone, unless we get this country back on the rails of the Constitution, the Commonwealth Constitution, 1900 UK. There are abridged versions. Someone told me there's an abridged version at the back of the room, if you want to read it and have a look. People are very rarely how they look. And so when you see someone there in a $12,000 suit who speaks very gently, Joe Biden speaks gently, and he's a psychopath. Albo has his little speech impediment. My son has a speech impediment. He's 14 and we can't get rid of the lisp. And now he hates it because Albo has one. Before he thought it was cute, now he hates it. But behind the scenes, Biden isn't a doddery old fool. And Albo isn't a softly spoken guy with a speech impediment. Behind the scenes, they are ruthless and brutal. And the longer that they can keep you and your children entertained with television, get rid of television. That's their little message box to you. The TikTok generation, I just joined TikTok this week after promising I never would because I always thought the CCP were going to get me. Paranoid about China being the bad guy. And what have we learned in the past 4 years? We've got a whole bunch of our own bad guys to sort out before we even think about worrying about China. And I joined TikTok because someone said to me that Labour and Liberal are quite prominent on TikTok and the kids are believing them. So I thought I might be tracked, I might be assassinated, they might listen and watch and all the terrible things we're told about China. But I have to get it because I have to speak to these children. Now, just quickly before I take questions, why am I with Rod? I interviewed Rod on my podcast about 18 months ago. And like today, and like every appearance and everything that Rod does, you can clearly see that he's a very emotional man and he loves Australia. And at that point, I was interviewing him about these titles. And then 18 months after I spoke to him, I got a very strange message from sort of an intermediary person I know, a woman who's sort of a fixer in politics in Brighton. And she said, somebody wants to meet you. And I don't meet people. I have a little webcam. I just speak to that. I don't go and meet people. I said, who wants to meet me? And she said, well, you know, it's the uni party. And I said, what, all of them? Like, who wants to meet me? And she said, well, a couple of their representatives want to meet you at a restaurant in Brighton. And I thought, that's it, I'm dead. I've literally stood there and called them all treasonous bastards for the last 3 years. My visa's cancelled, it's all over, I'm out of here. But I thought, you know what? You have to have mettle. And because I was that 5-year-old girl that looked into the eyes of evil, I thought, all right, I'll go and look into the eyes of evil again. I went on my own. I was a big girl because my husband was at work. And there were 2 people there, 2 women. One of them in bottle glasses, I was pretty sure was a psychologist or a psychiatrist who stared at me with glasses at the end of their nose, I think trying to work out if I could be corrupted. Because then the other one, who was super nice, she was a lovely lady, she offered me a job for over $300,000 a year overseeing the implementation of a 15-minute city in Frankston. Now, I could have said, what? You don't know me very well. But if my 54 years in business and in television and radio have taught me anything, sometimes it's good to shut up and just listen. And so I sat there for about an hour And it became very apparent, sometimes you see people's lips moving and your brain, well, mine does anyway, goes somewhere else. And it was literally like trying to reel me in, dangling the carrot of money. Because if I was tucked away on a high salary, making other people's lives a misery, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, which is holding up a mirror to them. I got home, happy to be out of there in one piece, and the first person to call me was Rod. It was about something completely unrelated. We'd never actually met. Today was the first time we actually met in person. And he said, "What have you been up to, mate?" I said, "You're never going to believe where I've been today. You're never going to believe what happened to me." And he said, he went quiet, and then he said, "You didn't tell me you were prepared to get into politics." And I said, well, I wasn't. I didn't know. It was in local council overseeing this. They just literally put you in there. It really is selection, not election, when you get right down to it. And he said, "Well, if you're going to be running for anyone, you're going to be running for me. Let's talk about you running with GAP." And so that's why I'm here today. Okay.
There's a sign on the highway, there's a fork in the road, a lifetime of lessons learned, don't mean nothing, it shows. Armchair doctor, experts making all the rules, selling us their theories while they take us all for fools. And there's nowhere left to hide on that freedom road. Don't tell me what to think, don't tell me how to live on that freedom road. Get your hand out of my pocket, I got no more to give, I got no more to give. There's a cop in the distance behind a big box tree. There's a crime being committed somewhere, but the radar gun's on me. A quiet quarter afternoon, I'm doing 105, like a fat kid on a seesaw, all tilted to one side. And there's nowhere left to hide, and no one's putting up a fight on that freedom road. Don't tell me what to think, don't tell me how to live on that freedom road. Get your hand out of my pocket, I got no more to give, I got no more to give.